It's gonna brew, baby. What is up, YouTube? It's your boy Millsy. Back to Hometown Commander, back for another episode of Millsy Brews, the show where I take my first pass at the commander in front of us on a budget on my quest to brew the magic world. You know what the motto, baby, is. It's ABB, always be brewing, and that's what we're back to do today. That deck list is going to be down in the description for you below. So I'd really appreciate it if you could interact with the video, like, comment, subscribe, consider checking out those links in the description. I'd appreciate it. But today, we're continuing through our first week of Avatar content and talking about Katara, the Fearless, a 3-mana Bant human war ally with whenever a triggered ability of an ally you control triggers, that ability triggers an additional time. Of course, allies are back in Avatar, and it's really cool because we get to pair the new allies with the old allies from like Oath of Gatewatch and Battle for Zendikar and the Zendikar era, and that's really fun. Not only because the new allies are really fun, but a lot of the old allies have really powerful triggered abilities, so Katara gets to really take advantage of that and merge them all together. Quick disclaimer that the price of the deck is a little bit higher than normal, but we are still in pre-release week, meaning that a lot of the prices are going to be kind of inflated. If you check the video later, check the deck list, you'll see the updated cost for the pricing and the cards like that. But just know the price will go down and it'll kind of better even out. But I want to say a quick thank you to the channel members. Thank you so much for supporting the channel. If you're interested in seeing all our videos just a little bit earlier for just $1 a month, consider checking that out down below. Like I said, we have so many new and old allies, but the new ones are a ton of fun. We have Aang airbending a master. Whenever he comes in, we can airbend another creature. Airbang. Gosh. Whenever one of our creatures you control leaves the battlefield without dying, you get an experience counter. And start our upkeep, we make a bunch of allies equal to the experience counter you have. Of course, Aang and some of the other of his friends really care about airbending. Airbending is a really fun mechanic, and we can kind of use it here to our benefit. Aang and Katara, of course, whenever they enter or attack, you make X 1/1 allies, where X is the number of tapped artifact or creatures you control. A really great ability, and probably a great commander in its own right. If you want to worry about more about them coming in, which is kind of what the allies want to do, but I think the triggered ability just makes more sense. You know, basically Katara just doubling this triggered ability to me makes more sense. Same thing with Aang coming in, right? It's going to double that. Appa says when it enters, you're going to airbend any number of other target non-land permanents you control, and whenever you cast a spell from exile, you get to make an ally. So that's pretty nice, right? You come in, you airbend a bunch of other creatures, have them come back in, trigger any of those ETBs again, and get the 1/1s. Appa the Vigilant from the scene box. Whenever it or another ally enters, creatures we control get +1/+1 flying and vigilance in a turn. So a really good ability. And these are the kind of abilities that's really gonna help our deck like take over the game and make all of our 1/1s and even bigger threats. Earth King's Lieutenant, whenever it comes in, you put a counter on each other ally you control, and whenever another ally comes in, it Gyros. Great guide divide, great divide guide. Gives all of our allies and lands the ability to tap for mana color. This is huge and is going to help lengthen our turns, right? As we get access to more mana. The new Hakoda looks at the top. You can look at your top card of your library at any time. You can cast allies from the top of your library, and you can sack it to give your creatures +all/+5 and indestructible in a turn. So a good way to protect yourself both in combat and in general. And now we get into some of the old allies. These two are from the original Zendikar. Hot of Reblade says whenever it or another ally comes in, you can put a counter on Hot of Reblade. Halmar Excavator says, again, whenever it or another ally comes in, target player puts the top X cards of their library into their graveyard where X number of allies you control. So you've got a really nice, you can grow Hot of Freeblade. You have a nice mill game plan there. Harbaugh's Druid just taps for X, mana of any one color, where X is the number of allies you control. Hero of Gomafada is going to give all your allies indestructible whenever an ally comes in. Kabir Angel is going to give our allies a protection of our choice of color until end of turn whenever it or another ally comes in. And the nice part about this is stackable, right? You could have a world where you give all your allies protection from every color, and then they can't be blocked, right? Kazandu Blade Master is going to grow every time another ally comes in. Blade Whirl gives all of our creatures first strike. Lantern Scout gives all of our creatures lifelink, so you can really start to see where some of these old allies come in real handy. Ondu Cleric gains us life equal to the number of allies we control whenever another ally comes in. Seascape Aerialist is going to hand out flying. Seagate Lore Master is another one that can profit for how many allies you control, this time though drawing cards. Jajura Warcaller gives all of our creatures +2/+2 whenever another ally comes in. Talus Paladin gives lifelink, and then you can put a counter on it. And then Captain's Clause is just going to make an ally whenever a quick creature attacks. So you can start to see that doubling up these abilities could be pretty darn good, especially some of these buffs or flying or gaining life equal to and things like that. So I think it's just all about pairing these old effects with these new allies, especially ways that we can make allies. But I think it's also about caring about allies in general. So many of our allies do care about general allies, but how do we support it? Well, you have things like Herald's Horn, right, making them a bit cheaper. Patrick Banner nets you a mana, but also buffs them all by +1/+1. Banner of Kinship and cards like it are a great way to just mass buff all your allies. When it comes in, we're obviously going to choose allies or creature type, and it's going to get a counter on it for each creature, each ally we control, and then all of our allies just get that buff for the rest of the game as long as it's out. We have things like Allied Teamwork that comes in and makes an ally and gives all our allies a buff. Kindred Discovery is going to draw us cards whenever our allies come in or attack. And then the new Soka's Charge is really great, giving all of our allies double strike and lifelink. This is one of those abilities because it helped probably keep us alive for a long portion of the game, allowing us to gain life as we attack and keeping our life total nice and high so we don't have to worry as much about the crackback on a lot of our attacks. But then we can just continue to add value to what we're seeing. Avatar's Wrath lets us choose up to one creature, then airbend every other creature on the battlefield. And until our next turn, our opponents can't cast spells from within their hands. So we get to get our creatures back off the airbend, get those abilities again. And our opponents have to wait a whole turn cycle to play their things. I think Avatar's Wrath is probably one of the best board wipes we've seen in a very long time. Not only because it gets around Indestructible, it gets around it gets around Indestructible, right? It gets around most of your protection spells that way. It obviously won't get around your phase out, protection spells. But again, it gets around Shroud, it gets around Hexproof, it gets around Indestructible, and it really just hurts your opponents. I think it's one of those spells that's going to see a lot of play in Commander. I would caution you to start thinking about it as a board wipe you might see access to. Your opponents will have too. A Chroma's Will can give our creatures a choice of two abilities, and if we have Katara, we're going to get both of them. A Chroma's Will with a pretty big board will go a pretty long way to help us end the game, giving them flying, double strike, lifelink, and protection from each color, effectively making them unblockable. Will go a long way in helping us end it. Panharmonicon is going to double up a triggered ability that will trigger from any artifact or creature coming in, so all of those ally triggered abilities are going to go off, which is really nice, and help us build our board. And then we have things like Broker's Ascendancy or Kathar's Crusade that can help growing our creatures. Broker's Ascendancy just grows them each turn by putting a counter on them. And then Kathar's Crusade actually puts a counter on all of our creatures whenever a creature comes in. And this can get out of hand really quickly. And it's probably one of the ways that we can make each one of these 1/1 allies coming in even more detrimental to our opponents. But I've said it before on the show and I'll say it again. No deck's ever complete. No different here, but I think going into testing, the answer probably becomes, are we doing enough to grow our board? Virtue, Loyalty, Coat of Arms, more ways to just mass grow our board, make all of our allies a threat immediately, take advantage of this lifelink, first strike, flying, indestructible that these allies are giving out for the most damage possible. Do we need more protection? I am playing a couple, protection spells. You could look at something more like And They Shall Know No Fear, giving out a buff and indestructible, and then do we want to play more one-sided board wipes? I consider Avatar's Wrath a one-sided board wipe because of its ability to lock your opponents down from replaying those creatures. But you could also run something like Raise the Palisade, calling allies and bouncing all the non-ally creatures back to their hand. There's so many more ways we could take advantage of the fact that we're playing with the allies on the back end. But I think a lot of my testing in this deck is going to come down to how much work do the allies do on their own. Because remember, the premise of this show is not, I'm going to hand you the perfect deck. The premise of the show is we're taking our first shot at it, and I think what I would honestly do is sit down and start to say, how good are the allies actually? How much can I actually rely on my allies to net me value on their own? And if I'm not seeing it, then I think I'm more apt to start bringing in things like Virtual Loyalty, Coat of Arms, abilities like that really mass buff my allies. I think we've got a few of them already, but the answer is, do we need more of them? So let's do what we love to do on the show and get into our playtest. Remember, the goal of playtest on our channel is not to find magical Christmas land. It's not just to show off all our best plays, but to get in some gameplay scenarios and kind of see what our hands might look like and how we're going to set things on up. So we've got a 3-lander here with White Lotus Reinforcements, just a buff to all of the allies. There's some RAM. We see Munda's Vanguard, can tap an untapped ally with it to put a counter on each creature we control. And then we have Everything Comes to Dust, another one-sided board wipe for us. So we could convoke it, so we could tap our creatures to help pay for it. And then we exile all creatures except those that share a creature type with a creature that convoke the spell, all artifacts, and all enchantments. So you lose your artifacts and enchantments, which is hopefully going to be worse for your opponent than us. Basically, we get to keep all of our allies. So the hope there is that we can really hurt our opponents, right? I think I want to go Turn 2, I think we just crack the nature's lore. Get another get another land in. They could path and then Katara, right? Get her in, start to get the process going. 5 mana. Undo Cleric. I'll cast it with the path to get the scry. I don't mind Cloud Shift. Now Undo Cleric says when it comes in, you're going to gain life with a number of allies you control. So we're going to actually do it twice, right? Because it triggers twice, which is pretty nice. And then think of the reinforcements. And again, it comes in, triggers Undo Cleric twice. So 2, 4, 7, 10 life gain this turn, right? And then you can have Katara attack this turn if you want. Cloud Shift's interesting, right? Basically blinking a creature, so you could blink something like one of our allies. I was thinking Blade World plus the Divide Guide. So this is going to come in, we gain 8. This comes in, we gain 10. So now we're just gaining a ton of life. Reinforcements is giving the buff. Blade World gave them first strike, so this is, a 4/4 this turn. We probably want to attack. And then the Cleric's only a 2/2. Maybe we don't end up attacking. But again, the nice part is now you could really see we're gaining life. They're getting first strike. You could see these allies really working well together. I almost want to do the Vanguard to start getting them to grow. Right, do that. Tap 1, 2, 3 for Mirror Entities. So they already got first strike. We gained 12 on that coming in. Mirror Entity is a changeling, so it's every creature type, so we're going to gain 14 when it comes in. But the reason I want to get the entity down is for X mana, you can give all your creatures base power on top of this XX, so we could, next turn, we could turn, 6 mana into making them all 6/6s with the buff, right? Or, grow with Vanguard's ability, right? Get the land in here. I mean, to me, that seems like the great choice. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. You can go 7 in the map, make all 7/7s, just get them attacking. We didn't have a creature come in this turn, so they're not going to have first strike. But I mean, I think at 7s, 8/8s, right, with the right reinforcements buff, you're going to be able to do some big damage. Start getting in, and then I was going to say, or you tap these 2 down, put a counter on all of them, and then you just have 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3 attackers, but they're 8/8s, so or 9/9. So I guess that comes down to you on which makes you want. I think the bigger amount, the more amount of 8/8s makes more sense to me. But now you get given the Mirror Entity as an answer every turn if you want. Here you can play the banner, buff all your allies again. I think I like just tapping down here to put the counters up. And now you can even go 4 into the entity. Let's say I tapped this down with it. I've got what? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 mana. I mean, I know I could tap more of the allies, but I don't really want to. I want to get them attacking. So again, pay 5, get them attacking. Now you're starting to see where this counters. I mean, all we need to do now is find a way to get some more allies in, and we're going to really be having a good time. We just didn't see any ways to make allies in the deck. And there are spells and creatures in the deck that make allies. We just didn't get to see them this time. But again, we got to see a nice wide board. The only thing we don't have is a way to protect our board, right? And we probably missed a scry off Pen and Ancestry once or twice. But again, I don't mind this. If you want to offense board wipe with the dust, you could. But otherwise, I don't mind this. Again, we have the Cloud Shift to blink something like this if we want to. Just to give them all first strike or whatever. There are options there. But again, I think if anything, we would love to have seen maybe more of a way to take advantage of having some allies come in. So again, if that's something we see all the time, maybe it's something we think about changing. Playtest 2 here, a 3-lander with Beast Caller Savant. Taps for a mana of any color, but it can only use it for a creature spell. There's Blade Master, one that grows. And then the Big Appa, that is 4 mana. So we should hopefully be able to get that Big Appa down pretty soon with how much mana we have. Here on turn 2, there's the Free Blade. It almost makes me wonder if you go Blade Master this turn, go Free Blade. Each of these get a counter, then go for the Savant. Each of these get a counter. And then my thought there is now you're just starting to grow them as we go. Courtyard, play Katara. Both of these go off twice, right? So they're going to each get 2 counters. I've still got 2 mana left. I guess I could hold it up for Plowshares. Bang, bang, bang. So he's got 2 mana left. Again, now these are becoming nice, right? Attackers, first strike, vigilance, there. And then, ooh, teamwork's pretty fun. We're just a couple mana off of Appa, right? We only got 5 right now. Swift Savior airbends another creature or spell. Nomafada, whenever it comes in, gives all your creatures indestructible. That seems like it could be fun. Again, get these guys in attacking. Or just a couple. I'm 1 land away from Appa at this point. Allied Teamwork comes in, buffs all of our them, makes a token. Bang bang. Now they all have indestructible. Then you could get Aang in. Question is, what do you airbend? I guess maybe you try to use it to airbend a spell, maybe in response to like something your opponents are trying to do, right? Again, take your attacks. Oh, just 1 mana off that big Appa. Now we have Aang here, airbending master. I'd probably airbend these 2. Because remember, it's doubled what we airbend. And that gives us what? That experience counter, right? Is it per? It's separate triggers. The trigger goes off twice, so it's actually 2. So the start of this turn, we would get 2 allies, which will trigger, right? These again. The really fun part here is this could airbend this, which could come back in and airbend this, right? So you have a way to kind of get this nice fun, and you keep the experience counters even if Aang leaves the battlefield. So that's kind of nice. I mean, you could do that. My thought is you just get the beast collar back down. These grow again. No, I thought I can't come down this turn just because we don't have enough mana. I guess this is where you could get Aang. I almost want to wait. Just 1 mana off, Appa being really good for us, right? Being a really good choice. And again, I think you saw it on this one. You saw the growth here on these guys. We just missed some of the flying or other abilities that could have made them more useful. But otherwise, they're just big attackers that are getting in. And hopefully, right, the goal is you draw the ire off of Katara or some of the other allies onto those big ones. You're gonna play this 3/3 lander with there's the guide for the mana, there's the guide for the cleric for the life, Lantern Scout again giving out life links, so pretty fun sets of abilities. There's the guide. Katara. 6 mana here, where we can tap Katara for mana. Cleric gaining 6. Earth Lieutenant passing out 2 counters, right? And then that was 4 mana. We want to tap anything for 2. Or they don't have to use the mana for anything, they can just tap for anything. Maybe you hold up the rapid, these 2 can still attack. There's United Front, making a bunch of allies, putting counters on creatures. Lantern Scout, 2 counters go here, everything gets lifelink till the turn, and we net the life. I almost wonders if you do that, because I don't want to lose. The only reason I don't really want to tap them down to go for something like this is because now I can use all of this lifelink that we just got, right, to go attack, get the life. You hold up the rapid. Now this turn, so we can give them a lifelink and put a counter on Talos whenever it comes in. Now I wonder if it's 5 tapping the guide down. This gets 2 more counters. They get lifelink, right? Again, attack again. You're still netting life equal to the number of allies you control. They're getting in with lifelink. And now, Lore Master can draw cards on future turns. Now you can tap this to draw 6. So now we start going really deep, right? Get more of them in. And so this is the kind of thing you really want to see, right? Drawing you cards, digging even deeper for the things we want to see. Well, let's get in playtest number 4 here. 3-lander with Arcane Signet's great. Cohort's great. It comes in as a changeling, so it's an ally and then makes an ally token. So that's pretty great. We see Cultivate and then the Blade Whirl. So we have some ways to ramp, which almost feels like it's worth doing, so that when we start getting our allies in, we're getting some good pieces in. Let's Cultivate. We don't need a blue source, right? We do have one in Arcane Signet, but let's get another one. 3 green sources, 3 white sources, 2 blue sources. There's not a ton of blue in the deck, so I think we'll just get a forest to hand. And I believe we had 1 mana left. We could hold up the Rapid. But here, 6 mana. Katara. Reinforcements. And then this turn, what? Cleric that gains 6. I almost think Broker's Ascendancy just to start growing, right? Growing them all, making them into threats. We could have attacked with Katara that turn. Now this turn's 6 mana. Now I kind of like the Cohort. Make the Shapeshifter. So that's 8 here and then 10 here. So 18 life this turn, 4 there. And then I guess that, give him first strike, get him attacking. The whole point here is now we're just handing out counters. My thought here is now we're just going to start really growing our board. Haru Hidden Talent can start airbending, turning all our lands into creatures. They aren't allies, but they do turn them into creatures, which can get them attacking, especially with that Broker's Ascendancy. I think you bounce the Cohort, right? Then next turn, right, we can get it back in, right, for another 2/2 Shapeshifter, right? Because now we're just getting more allies, and then we would have gotten a ally off of Aang's ability because we're at we're at 1 experience counter at the moment. And now, I mean, you take the attacks, you've got first strike, you just gained a ton of life, and a turn, right? So now these creatures are just growing. Again, if we had any way to blink, that's where I think the Restoration Angel and the Felidar Guardian could be so interesting here. In a deck like this, kind of like what we saw earlier in the week with, any way to blink Aang could be really interesting. That's what I tried to do with like things like Cloud Shift, is a way to basically blink this or something else. We didn't see any of the big, like, the buffs or anything like that, which starts to make me really think that that's something we need to pursue more in the list. I mean, I love things like Broker's Ascendancy, and I like things like Kathar's Crusade, but maybe it's time to add the Coat of Arms. It's time to add, the virtual loyalty, start to really try to buff them more, is what I would say, because maybe we're just not big enough. Our creatures aren't big enough to start taking over more of the game. But let me know, what do you think of Katara down in the comment section below? Really interesting deck. I think this one was a ton of fun to brew, and I think it'll just get better. I mean, depending on how you want to take it, what you want to look for, what allies you choose to take. Again, you have a lot of allies entering the battlefield, so you can take advantage of abilities like that and just try to take over the board. But let me know what you think, and I will catch you on the next one.